Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Lighthouse Sessions. Every episode, I introduce a new friend. Today, I'm excited to introduce a long-term friend. So Tristan and I, we met through the wonderful and amazing Daniel Andrews. Thank you, Daniel. I think it's fair to say Tristan and I were long-lost brothers that somehow got separated in a past life, and we've reunited. So everyone, please welcome Tristan Chicklowski. He is one of my favorite people. And today we're going to talk about some really fun stuff. So Tristan, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, Tristan Michael I'm a serial entrepreneur with severe ADHD, and I love it. I take great pride in how my mind works. I think everyone should take a more mindful approach to life, and I also use that same thing in my business practices. I do a lot of consulting for neurodivergent entrepreneurs, but today I'm really focusing on the niche industry that I love to support, and that's business brokers. And my entire mythos is, what are we doing now with this? Which requires us to know what it is and know where we're moving it. And if we don't systematize that, it's going to be too hard. The internet, all the channels, it's just made it very busy. And my goal is to give that both high-tech, high-touch approach to brokers, so that way they can get more leads and get more deals and have a happy life.
Awesome. And yes, this is a special series. We're focusing on the business brokerage world. And to give it context for my listeners and my audience, I always talk about the life cycle of a business, and I jokingly say cradle to grave. The business broker is, I think, the last real meaningful relationship in a business where either you're handing that baton off and somebody else takes your baby and runs with it, or it's going to be buried and dismantled. And in my old life as an accountant, I would cringe because people would say, well, it's too expensive to use a broker. I'm going to sell it myself. And then they run it into the ground because they don't know how to sell it. And next thing you know, I'm winding it up and doing the autopsy going, why didn't you call a broker? So let's talk about what's coming in the business brokerage world, because I think if we help the brokers, we're going to help this greatest, I think it's the greatest transfer of wealth in history. How do you see systems and processes helping brokers? Because I think a lot of them are, they're the old school. I have a friend, he says, I'm just an old school guy. I shake hands, kiss babies. A lot of them don't have systems. What's that costing them?
Well, I mean, it's costing them so much of their time and emotions primarily, because every lead is unmeasured. So you don't know whether it's important or not. So you're always kind of anxious about, is this going to be the right lead? If this is the right lead, I have to make sure I don't miss it. There's a huge opportunity right now, primarily because, as we all know, the boomer generation is really officially retiring. And what a lot of us don't understand is that was also the everyone goes to college and gets a job. The amount of people who are business owners in this demographic is larger than anyone else. And because they work so hard, they absolutely refuse their kids to learn anything about their business because they had to go to college, because they had to get a good job. And now they have a business that they have no one in their family to hand it off to, that has employees, that does things. A lot of these are really a bedrock of a community. They're things that you need every single day. It's not Amazon what you're ordering, it's who's fixing your car. It's often, surprisingly, a lot of micro industries are also coming up, but that's an entirely different generation. The boomers are a very set of industries, but you also have a huge influx of people who got rich on the internet with small tech businesses and are now ready to move on to the next thing. And that's that other big pool. The problem is simple. It's just like realtors. When you go to learn to be a business broker, you learn how to look at books, actually value a business. America is the wild, wild west of business, especially small. You can do your books any way you want. And in fact, most small business owners are trying to reduce their tax liability, which has a side effect of actually reducing what its sale value is, what it's actually worth. People buy a business to have revenue. If you spend all your revenue to lower your taxes, you have no real profitability there. So they learn all this, and then they never learn. And just like realtor, they never learn this is actually a lead generation business. Anyone can learn how to read the books on a business. Anyone can learn how to normalize that. That is a base. You can actually hire someone to do that for you. You don't actually need to know it to be a successful business broker. What you need is the ability to get in front of people when they're at that point in their life and actually help them transition, find the right buyer for them, help them realize that they are going to sell a part of themselves that is larger than anything else that they've ever had other than their children and their wife. And when that goes away, they're not going to know what to do. Every day for at least the last 20 years, they have gotten up and they have made this thing more successful to feed their family and to feed their employees' family. And then one day it's all gone. And a lot of what this business is actually helping them move on and not make the selling of their business the worst thing that happened in their life, but the doorway to the rest of their life.
Well, and one thing you and I are going to talk about this because I'm obsessed with transition events. And I think the textbook version, if you go to any of these big succession and transition events, is, somebody starts a business today and tomorrow they sit down with their coach and their broker and, they have this 20-year plan. But from my experience, it's almost always marital breakdown, health breakdown, death, or burnout or something. Like it's almost always an urgent trigger event. And in my world, that's trying to catch lightning in a bottle. And you want to be standing there at the right moment with the right bottle. Truly, and I don't mean this with disrespect, a lot of deals close just out of sheer dumb luck. But also a lot of deals don't close because the work hasn't been done to make the deal close successfully quickly. And if somebody's dead, I once saw an instance with an accounting firm. The accountant died and the broker took 6 months to sell it. The family complained about that, but all of the clients were gone because there was no plan in place.
Yeah, and to make that side effect worse, I don't know a new broker who won't list anything that says yes, regardless of its likelihood of closing. In the brokerage world, there aren't any high-level government regulations, so everything is self-reported. And the self-reported number, so this is inflated, is only 20% of listed deals close. And if you ask me, there's no question that means brokers are very hungry, because when you're hungry, you don't have discernment and you say yes to everything. And then you end up being busy doing a lot of work that never actually comes to fruition, because once you list it, there is a massive amount of work getting it ready to list. And every buyer that you talk to that says no, that is time gone permanently. And often you'll find that that's where their lead problem comes in. They work real hard to get one, they get one, they say yes, it's not good. And then they spend the next 4 months finding out how bad it is and how much work that they're doing for naught. And they're not marketing, generating those new leads for those people who do have quality businesses and are ready to sell.
I love that. And you and I are going to talk about this many, many times because I'm obsessed with this. This is literally the greatest potential opportunity or the greatest risk, and it all comes down to how we handle it. Now, I'm going to share one thing. I talked to a broker, and I proposed to him that he should have an alliance with a business coach. And he said, well, that's a waste of time because I need deals today. I don't want to wait for the coach to do their thing. And I said, well, wouldn't it make sense that if you start a relationship today, let's pretend the coach takes 2 years to get the value, all of the prep work, everything else can be done while you're waiting for that listing. But now I'm not saying stop doing other things. I'm just saying plant the orchard that you're going to eat from in 5 years. But it was fascinating because no, I need deals today, not later. And I'm like, that attitude's going to keep you chasing and hungry. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think it's the reason that only 20% close. They say yes and hope, instead of saying yes and know that it will close. And I think when you only have 1 or 2 people that you're talking to and you're begging them to say yes, it's real hard. And specifically, this is a time where a lot of old methods work really well of getting people's attention. Postcards with funny sayings on them actually get attention. Cold email does work. People who run businesses have to use their email. They couldn't get away from that because they do everything online when it comes to paperwork, but they also still check mail because they do have vendor invoices that come in. They do have a lot of net 30, net 90 things that they like a paper stack to actually go through and pay. They like that as a physical checklist, regardless of whether they communicate through email or not. So it's not just a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity where tactics will work that you wouldn't expect that are incredibly inexpensive.
I love that. And I think it's worth pointing out, I love people who are world record holders. And Joe Girard is actually the world record holder for World's Greatest Salesman. And it's more profound when you look at what he did. This was in the 50s, 60s, 70s. He sold more cars through his dealership that he worked at than most dealer networks sell. And he did it with something really ridiculously simple. He had a team of assistants, and every month he sent out greeting cards with the basic theme of, I like you, let's work together. And it all became about referrals for him. And I think that's one of the fundamental things. I look at the business, I'm a business nerd and I'm obsessed with business models. The hope we catch somebody after a heart attack, literally it's like chasing an ambulance and hoping that the person survives so they can sign your contract. The timing is so precise, it's almost impossible to replicate.
And, you kind of highlight a dirty little secret that no one says out loud about referral business. And again, the business brokerage translates so much to the real estate brokerage in regards to generating leads and listings. They all say you need a referral network. You need a referral network. And then everyone hears in the back of their mind, oh, I need to go talk to lawyers and accountants. But if you ask any broker who has any success through referrals and you ask them, who is this person? 9 times out of 10, you're going to hear it is a person who I successfully sold their business. You will never hear them say they got their grand slam from a divorce lawyer or a CPA. They had someone with a successful transaction. They knew it was more about life after the transaction. And because of that relationship, you've got this happy retiree who's telling his whole network, why are you working like a fool? You could be golfing with me right now. I think it's time to think about exit. And you know who they refer him to? The broker.
And I think that's the key point is proximity to the event. Again, a divorce lawyer, by that point, it's already too late. And I'm going to spill a dirty secret from the accounting world. Most accountants prepare the year-end books and do the bookkeeping and accounting to minimize taxes. I can't tell you how many times clients came to me and said, okay, we're going to sell the business. We need to sell it right away. Our books are not ready for due diligence. And I actually had one client who came to me, I'd been with him for a decade. He said, you screwed me over all those years where you were reducing my taxes. Now nobody wants to buy my business. And I'm an accountant at heart. So you tell me something like that. I did the math and I said, look, you saved X dollars in taxes because you asked for it. Now you're coming to me saying, okay, now switch everything. And, just for disclosure, in Canada, an accountant needs minimum 2 years to prepare your books to be saleable. So that's my fundamental pain, is that everybody's looking for, let's solve this problem after the heart attack. And it's like, what if we solve the problem to avoid the heart attack?
And that's probably one of the big places where Canada and US, the brokering world works the exact same, except for in America, it is the Wild West of bookkeeping. So I'd say one of the things that a broker in America has to do a lot more than one in Canada is going to have to do is a normalization. Buyers are actually very okay seeing like, this is what their actual taxes are. This is the truth. And it's the truth as far as the government concerns. Now, let me give you the reality of the situation, because he didn't need to pay his daughter $70,000 a year for 4 hours a week. That's not a cost of doing business. So they are, but that's where most of the education comes in. And that's why they're so tired when they get a listing, because that huge normalization. And then every buyer has a question. they don't believe. They're trying to sniff out if there's a lie when we're trying to tell the cleanest truth we can the most accurately, because this is actually what you're buying. What he had when he sold it is not what you get when you get it.
Well, and for what it's worth, Canada, we can do that adjustment, but the problem is always they talk to the broker, give them everything. And by the way, this is one of the things I found fascinating. The accountant is almost always the last one to know. I once got a call from a broker saying, "Hey, we're just doing the final paperwork and we don't have your client's tax return." And I went, "What now?" And by the way, this is one of the things I will say is have all of your experts in the loop. But one of the things we can do sort of a reconciliation and a normalization. But the problem is a lot of businesses, again, heart attack, death, whatever it is, they give the tax returns to the broker without the narrative. And of course, when it's optimized for taxes, it looks terrible for a buyer. And again, that's, fairly legitimate that, what do I pay myself? Is it fair market? What do I pay my staff? There's normalization. But if the accountant doesn't know about it, it doesn't happen. So then it goes into the hands, they have their SIM or whatever they call it. It ends up in the hands of a potential buyer. And once the doubt seeds are planted, it's a lot of work to uproot those weeds. Whereas if we have this conversation up front, everybody's okay with that.
So true.
But I think, and that's the fundamental is, and I know you know this, but I think the thing that people miss is that if you look at proximity to the event, divorce lawyers, estate and trust people, accountants, they're at the scene of the accident. They're first responders. You need to look at, as you said, the other sellers, because they're the ones that were in the trenches and both of us were grinding away. And hey, wait a minute, why is Tristan so relaxed now? Where'd that tan come from? That's where people start to think about, maybe one day I should have this conversation. And I think that's the moment people are missing, is that has a runway, whereas a death, there's a ticking clock on the value of the business.
Sometimes you'll have people who are, as we get older, we just can't admit that our bodies are getting older. Our mind remembers us being able to do X, and now our body does Y. And often that will be another one that can be a struggle, because they don't want to admit that they can no longer run the business. It's past their time. That can also often be a fun struggle, just because there's a lot of ego in it. Again, this is their baby. For a man, other than their kids, when a man owns a business, and I assume it's somewhat true for a woman as well, but they take great pride in this thing that they created that really adds a lot of value to their world, their personal world. And there's a lot more emotion in it than people realize. So I find people who are still running strong in their mind, but their body can't do it, is a big one. And then the realization that I have grandkids and I didn't get to spend any time with my kids because I was working 7 to 7 and then working extra hard when I got home from 9 till 11. They realize, like, I want to have that time, and I'm going to have it with my grandkids, and I can't do it while I still, often it's they want to do this, but they cannot, as long as this is true, in the realization of, like, okay, I want this more than that. It's time to let this go.
Well, and one thing I'm going to share, because it fascinates me, what a lot of people, brokers and accountants and buyers included, they don't recognize that today the business has to feed my family. Once we sign the paperwork, it effectively has to feed 2 families, because the buyer has to pay for it. And, so it's an interesting thing, because I see a lot of transitions that just don't work, because for some reason everybody forgot that there's loan payments or financing. So yeah. So the fascinating thing, and this is the part I obsess over, is if you build a business today that is valuable and it's sellable, the good news is it's actually easier, better, and more profitable for you to run it while you take the time to find the right buyer.
Yes. And you'll always get a better price if you can say no to a lower one. And that's about time.
Exactly. And it fascinates me. And for what it's worth, I learned this from a mentor very early in my career. He said to me, retirement equals death. And when you put it that way, literally that tells you that's what entrepreneurs are thinking. So to say, let's talk about succession and what that looks like, a lot of them want to put it off because you might as well say, when do you plan on dying? Nobody wants to have that conversation.
And again, it goes back to that business broker. Some of the advice I often most for increasing your close rate is stop talking about what it's worth and what are they going to do once it's sold. Be in the position where it's already sold. They're going to want to sell it more. The value is going to be less important. But the thing that matters most is when they wake up and it's over, they now know that they have a plan of what they're going to do. Often you will find that once someone retires, they wake up, they make a coffee, have breakfast, and watch TV. Yep. That's what they'll do. And then maybe it's a month or so before they realize this isn't the rest of my life. I don't want this and I need to do something next. And brokers are in actually the perfect spot to make sure that they don't have that very depressing month. And then they're still lost. Now they just know that they don't want that. That just starts the what am I going to do next? And brokers, again, are really at that prime position to really set them up to enjoy the rest of their life.
I love that. And I think that's the key is we're having a lot of the wrong conversations when truly, we are coming to a point where more business owners than ever are getting older, more business owners than ever want to slow down. And sadly, that also means there's fewer buyers unless you're being creative. So I know you work on sort of helping people fix their marketing funnel. What's the first step if somebody wants to reach out to you and say, hey, Tristan, are we a fit? Because one thing I know about you, you don't work with everybody. You work with the ones who are willing to do things differently and build systems. What's the first step in reaching out and finding out how they can work with you?
Well, if you know that you have a lead generation problem and you kind of want to have it all solved and have it done up in one nice service/software, I can go into a long discussion of every little tool and tip and trick that's built into this, but the seller readiness system is the premier product that we sell to brokers so that way they can stop worrying about their quality of leads. A lot of brokers aren't at that stage. They don't have enough closed deals. They can't necessarily afford it, or they really just kind of want to know where they're at before they know if this is the right answer for them. So a lot of my clients first start off with a marketing audit. Today, you're just doing everything everywhere, and there's no outcome driven underneath it. So it's not a surprise that you're playing roulette and you're getting roulette odds on your leads and your listings. Taking that time, we'll actually get to look at everything you're doing. Is any of it worth it? Whatever is worth it, how do we actually make it work for you and not just be work for you to do? And then we really talk about how to actually, the concept of a lead magnet. Brokers aren't marketers, and I'm okay with that. But if I was to give any person one single bit of free advice that would ultimately change the rest of their trajectory in regards to getting better leads, stop offering valuations. Whether they're free or paid, if your whole conversation with the seller is about what the business is worth, the whole conversation about this transaction will be what it's worth. And that's just not the way to go. My personal recommendation is you use a lead magnet that does one of two things. My favorite is a survey that helps the seller know if their business is even sellable. You have no idea how much a person will appreciate you trying to tell them, hey, no one's even going to buy this and here's why, because that will actually help them more than whatever the price is. If the price is low, now you've got to tell them their business sucks for X, Y, and Z reason. This is why we can't get that. That's not the conversation we want to have. Letting them know, hey, buyers aren't going to want this for X, Y, Z. Hey, these books aren't readable. These are things that will actually not only help the seller, but they're going to intrinsically connect you with them because you're going to be the one that actually helped their business sell more. This is a two-sided blade, though. you are now actually going to know why the seller's looking to sell, what in their business is going to make it hard to sell. This information is more important to you than it is for them. Yes, you're helping them, but you are qualifying a lead on a level that you can't do in any evaluation. The lower barrier to entry, I like a simple PDF that's very niche down to one life circumstance of why they would have to sell their business. And then you can make 5. My favorite, the 5 things every business owner needs to know about retirement post-selling. And you can take 20 minutes in Canva and Chat GPT and figure out what actually does happen and really enlighten them of what could go wrong if you are successful in this transaction. Again, focused on post-transaction. You know that anyone who downloads this and gives you their email is considering retiring. You know that they are now more informed about the worries of if they do it wrong. And again, it's not selling it wrong. It's not having a plan for what's next. Your life is not over when you sell this business. In fact, you are reborn and you are anew with nothing except for a bunch of money. And not only can you not take it with you, you can spend it in a year if you want to try. So changing the lead magnet is hands down the biggest piece of advice I give. So that way you have the ability to not actually have more specific leads, but you can qualify them before talking to them. Do not have a calendar on your website that just says you can have 30 minutes free of my time, because at the end of that appointment, you're going to have notes. You're going to have to organize them, put them somewhere. You're going to have to decide if they're worth the amount of dopamine that you're going to have to utilize figuring out this complete question mark is going to tire you, and you're not going to be able to follow up with every lead. And the follow-up that's where the fortune is. If you look at the reported numbers, on average, a lead to listing is 6 months of contact. Yeah. Do you really want to be talking about the price of the business, or do you want to be talking about their life and what's next over the next 6 months to convert them? And you need to remember who they are. You need to remember their life circumstance. This is a highly personal business. The technology is only meant to make it easier on our minds. It's supposed to reduce our thinking process, not our human interaction process.
Well, and I'm going to second and underline something you said there, because when we start the conversation with what's your business worth, there's a really good chance that we're going to have to utter some version of the phrase, your baby is ugly and nobody likes it. And from a sales psychology point of view, you've pissed them off right out of the gate. They're not rushing to sign a deal with you. They'll go to whoever gives them the best price. And again, it ignores all of the other elements of a deal. Now, the funny thing is, every successful broker I know, and I know many, all of them are relationship first, deal second. Yet when you're saying, let's get a free evaluation, you go straight to transaction and you lose sight of what you're best at.
So you also even the seller from considering that this relationship is more than just the numbers. On the psychology side, you're shutting down any opportunity for them to even consider that, rather than making that what this is all about.
I love that. Now, I believe that it takes a community and a village to raise a business and to make sure it transitions. Let's talk about very quickly some of the relationships you have, because I know you work with Deal Studio, and I know you have some relationship with Trent Lee. What are some of the resources you recommend to your clients when they're looking at how can they help grow their business brokerage side of things?
Although I personally am not a fan of licensing and a bunch of pretty pictures at the bottom of your website, that doesn't mean they don't have a value. Hands down, I'd say IBBA is worth the investment. Every broker will just take you seriously having that. So, but that's more of a box to check. That's like getting a GED, but a good investment. Now, what about the things that'll actually allow you to work better? Business Broker HQ is the #1 premier online community for business brokers. They run industry insight segments twice a month, which if you're in the brokerage world and you're not niche, you are giving so much money away and doing so much extra work being a generalist. We'd have to have, honestly, a whole interview just on why that's a bad idea. Weekly, they're always saying what's new. And when you actually get into their community, they have better resources on how to actually be a better broker than anywhere else. Now, I will say that I have a official partnership with Deal Studio, but I have that because they were the best option for a broker platform. If you need something that's going to be able to actually manage all your leads, manage all the document signing, manage all the social media promotion, do the emails, do the phone calls, do the landing pages, do the lead magnets, there is no better platform than Deal Studio. It's powered by GHL. They don't hide that fact. If you don't know about Go High Level and you're not a tech, don't bother looking into it. If you are a tech, it's a deep pool and you'll just want to be with Deal Studio more. Those are, and in general, I probably know more business brokers in the country than any other single person that's non-IBPA. I'm not a broker. I am a support system to them. I don't want any of their business. I want to make their business better. So I pride myself in being a name that everyone knows. And I'm the only one that actually wrote the book on how to stop wasting time talking to dead leads and tire kickers. Those people who take the 3 a.m., "Ooh, I'd like to talk to you about your business." You get on the call and it's hard to not say it's not a waste of your time because you probably paid for that lead. So it wants to have innate value.
Yeah. And when we pay for leads, we'll chew on that bone long after there's any meat left on it. So I appreciate you. And I just want to say for the community, you know who your friends are when you say, "Tristan, I'd like to interview you on my podcast. And we're going to talk about the ugly side of running a business brokerage." And Tristan said, "When?" So thank you very much, Tristan. I adore you. I love the fact that you're helping people solve real problems with technology. So thank you for being on the show with me.
It was an amazing experience, and I want to thank you for having me.